Welcome to the 5th lecture of the Human Rights Lecture Series. In the previous lectures, you have learned more about the 9 core human rights treaties and the different treaty monitoring bodies. In this lecture and the 6th lecture, we will zoom into the Universal Periodic Review, also known as UPR. Among others, we will answer the questions like: what is the Universal Periodic Review, UPR? Who conducts the review? And which documents are reviewed during the UPR?
So good morning, welcome back. I'll ask you to please take a seat.
Distinguished delegates, Your Excellencies, colleagues from civil society organizations, it is a privilege for me to be given an opportunity to contribute in helping make the world a better place in terms of respect for human rights.
Law by December 2018 and the Affirmative Action Bill into law by March 2018.
Which is an opportunity for civil society to engage directly, ensuring that our governments are responsible.
Having the platform, it changes everything because you actually get to tell your story. You get to tell people what needs to be done.
Without proper anti-discrimination legislation, human rights violations will still persist.
Les pré-sessions se déroulent dans l'enceinte même du Palais des Nations, où ils savent que les diplomates seront attentifs à la voix des défenseurs pour pouvoir porter des recommandations, des attentes, des besoins devant la communauté internationale.
C'est un levier extraordinaire quand on revient sur les rivages de son État pour pouvoir expliquer qu'on aura une voix, on sera entendu, on sera crédible pour faire avancer la cause des droits de l'homme dans nos pays.
If the pre-sessions didn't exist, we would have to make them up. We need that as diplomats, that contact, direct contact, to be challenged.
Podamos hablar directamente con las organizaciones de sociedad civil y escuchemos de primera mano lo que está sucediendo en términos de la situación de derechos humanos en los países examinados.
Why they are still pending? Honestly, in my opinion, I think it's just lack of political will.
This video already gave a nice introduction in the Universal Periodic Review, but let's dive a bit deeper into the UPR mechanism. The Universal Periodic Review is a unique process which involves a periodic review of the human rights records of all 193 UN member states. Currently, no other mechanism of its kind exists. The UPR is an innovation of the Human Rights Council, which is based on equal treatment for all countries. This mechanism was created in March 2006. And it is an interactive dialogue that is state-driven. The UPR aims to improve the human rights situation on the ground in all UN member states, and it addresses the human rights problems wherever they may occur. Firstly, the UPR provides an opportunity for all states to explain what actions they have taken to improve the human rights situation in their countries, and to overcome challenges in the implementation of their human rights obligations. It therefore helps states under review to look at how they can best fulfill these obligations, and they have a platform to share best practices with the international community as a whole. Moreover, this process is an opportunity for the United Nations to address human rights issues that might occur in a specific state and help individual UN member states to deal with human rights challenges in ensuring fulfillment of human rights obligations. The reviews of the UN member states within the UPR are conducted by the UPR Working Group of the Human Rights Council. So what is the Human Rights Council? The Human Rights Council is an intergovernmental body within the United Nations system. It consists of 47 states who are responsible for the promotion and protection of all human rights around the globe. The 47 states are elected by the General Assembly for a period of 3 years. In the composition of the Human Rights Council, there is a regional division of seats. On the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, you can find the current 47 members. The number of seats per regional division is for African states 13 seats, the Asian Pacific states also have 13 seats, Eastern Europe states count 6 seats, Latin American and Caribbean states a number of 8 seats, and Western Europe and other states have 7 seats. The Council meets throughout the year at the United Nations in Geneva. The meetings are a multilateral space to address human rights issues and situations. When a human rights emergency has occurred, the Council can react and provide recommendations on how the country can ensure that the human rights are well respected. In its meetings, the Council gives attention to thematic human rights issues, as well as country-specific situations that require its attention. This brings me to the Human Rights Council's Advisory Committee and the special procedures. The Council has a so-called Advisory Committee. This committee is a body of 18 independent experts and it functions as a think tank of the Council. The committee's work primarily focuses on advising the Council based on studies and research relevant for a certain human rights situation or theme. The 18 independent experts are elected by the Council and are like the UN regional groups and divisions, also proportionately representing a certain geographical region. Here you see the representation per region. Moreover, the experts are from different professional backgrounds and they all serve in their personal capacity. Even though they are all coming from a regional diverse group, they are not representing a specific country. The committee members serve for a term of 3 years and are eligible for re-election only once. Alongside the Advisory Committee, the Human Rights Council can decide in a certain case that a human rights situation needs specific attention or in-depth investigation. For that, it can create a special procedure consisting of a special rapporteur or a working group. These special rapporteurs are independent experts who serve in their personal capacity. They undertake country visits, act on individual cases and concerns of a broader structural nature by sending communications to states and other actors bringing human rights problems to their attention. Moreover, they do thematic studies and expert consultations, but they also engage in advocacy to raise public awareness and provide advice for technical cooperation. These independent experts report at least once a year to the Council on their findings and recommendations, as well as to the UN General Assembly. Now we have a general idea of what the Human Rights Council is. This brings me to the mechanisms that the Council has to review human rights situations and issues. In the first place, the Universal Periodic Review, which we will elaborate further on in this lecture and the next lectures. But also good to mention that there is the individual complaint procedure, which we will not focus on in this lecture series. So let us dive a bit deeper into the different cycles within the UPR process. As I already mentioned, the UPR was introduced in 2006. The UPR consists of a 4-year cycle. The first cycle took place between 2007 and 2011. The second cycle was from 2012 to 2016, and the third cycle that we are currently in started in May 2017. The reviews take place at the UN Palace of the Nations in Geneva during the session of the UPR Working Group. The UPR Working Group meets 3 times a year for 2 weeks, usually in January and February, May and June, and in October and November. In each session, 14 states are reviewed, which means 42 states per year. Up till now, we have had 100% participation by all 193 UN member states in this process, which is a major achievement. Knowing what we know now about UPR, you might question what this review is based on. Each state is reviewed on the basis of the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the different human rights instruments to which the state under review is party, as we discussed under Lecture 4. Apart from these, there are voluntary pledges and commitments made by states, including those undertaken when presenting their candidates for the elections to the Human Rights Council. What is also relevant in the review is applicable international humanitarian law, information provided by the earlier mentioned advisory committee and the special procedures, but also the implementation of accepted recommendations in a previous review, and the development of the human rights situation in the state under review. This brings us to the question, which documents are used to review during the UPR working group session? There are 3 main documents used to conduct the review of the state. Let's have a look at them. First is the information provided by the state. This is called the National Report. Before drafting the National Report, governments are encouraged to host a broader national consultation process in country as a preparation for the National Report. A consultation should be done within various branches of government, but the government under review should also consult relevant stakeholders, including the national human rights institutions and civil society organizations, in drafting the National Country Report. The second document used is the UN compilation, prepared by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. This report contains a summary of information of different UN specialized agencies, UN treaty bodies, special procedures, observations, and comments by the states and other relevant documents. And the third document that is used is the stakeholder submission. This is additional, credible, and reliable information provided by other relevant stakeholders. It's a summary of all the information provided by stakeholders and summarized by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Stakeholders include civil society actors, national human rights institutions, and regional organizations. In Lecture 7, we will come back to the stakeholder submission as an opportunity for CSOs to engage in the UPR process. All 3 documents, including the National Report, the compilation of UN information, and the summary of stakeholder information, are available on the website of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. I will show you how you can find and download these documents. You go to the homepage of the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. Then you click on Human Rights Bodies. Then go to Universal Periodic Review. Then you have the option Documentation by Country, whereafter you can find a list of all countries involved in the UPR process. When we scroll down and click, for example, on United Republic of Tanzania, you will find all the reports and information per cycle. The next question is, if this UPR process is state-driven, who then takes the lead during the UPR session? There are 3 states that take the lead during the UPR sessions. The leading states form the troika. Here are 7 things you should know about the leading 3. The troika. They are all 3 member states of the Human Rights Council. They are selected out of the different regional groups. Every state under review has a different troika. They ensure that the sessions proceed in an orderly way. They may group issues or questions to be shared with the state under review. They also serve as a rapporteur. They prepare the reports of the working group, which is the full account of the proceedings. The troika receives written questions raised by other states to the state under review. We came at the end of the 5th lecture. In this lecture, you've been introduced into a unique state-driven and interactive human rights mechanism, the UPR, which aims to improve the human rights situation on the ground of all UN member states. And it addresses the human rights problems wherever they may occur. We have seen that the review is conducted by the UPR Working Group of the Human Rights Council. I have explained the different cycles of the review process, the documents that are important during the review, and we have spoken about the role of the troika. In the next lecture, we will look at what happens exactly during the UPR review process.